This is Legends of Tabletop, and I'm your guest, Pete Rawlik, author of Reanimators, The Weird Company, and Reanimatrix, and my new book, The Peaslee Papers. Available soon at all your finer internet outlets. Hi.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, welcome and thank you for joining us today, Pete. I really appreciate you taking the time to come with us today. And what is it that you are lifting to your lips, this fine beverage this evening? Blue Moon!
This episode of Pete's Madness brought to you by Blue Moon Belgian White.
Opinions stated, therefore, are not necessarily those held by Blue Moon.
Anyway, yes. Let's see how fast Pete can get drunk off of cheap beer.
Cheap beer? You got to learn how to make it.
That's your expertise. I'm smoking meat these days.
Oh.
You're making beer, I'm smoking meat.
Okay, so
all right.
Peaslee Papers. Do tell.
So, back when I was writing Reanimators, the book got hijacked by the next door neighbor, who was Nathaniel Peaslee, and from Lovecraft's Shadow Out of Time. And he took over half the book, and to the point where it's like, my God, I have to kill this guy. Well, thankfully, there was a limit to when he was there, because his character gets changed dramatically in the original story. But I had written a bunch of stories about Nathaniel Peaslee, and then I wrote a whole bunch of sort of espionage-y Cthulhu Mythos stories about his son Wingate. And then I wrote some very soft sci-fi pieces about Hannah, their sister. And then Robert Peaslee is like all over. He's the main character in Reanimatrix, well, for half the book. So I wrote and then I have stories about one of their descendants, Pandora Peaslee. So I have all these stories, and I was like, oh, and it's like putting them together and looking at them, and I realize it's like there's a story arc here that I'm telling, and I got 50% done. Let's write another 50,000 to 60,000 words. We'll put it together, and it's not really a novel. It's not really a collection of short stories. It's sort of like an epic, and it runs from, say, Mesozoic period all the way to the heat death of the universe. And it focuses on various members of the Peaslee family.
Yes.
And, Mike is Mike at the Lovecraft ezine is a big fan of not only Cthulhu Mythos fiction, but time travel fiction. And since half these stories or more relate to time travel, it just seemed like a perfect fit for him and I to work together on this. So, yeah. Peaslee Papers out from Lovecraft ezine Press. Some people already have copies. We had a formatting issue, so we stopped production, and we're going to start up again probably in a couple weeks. But we'll have copies for sale at Necronomica. Limited amount, but we'll have them.
Okay.
So, kind of cool. I really like it. It sort of brings together, in a very broad brush way, some of my ideas about how the mythos work. And I have some heretical ideas about how the mythos work. So I'm not going to do any spoilers, but if you're a fan of the great race of Yith, this is going to be the book for you.
Yes.
So
I am trying to refrain from interjecting what might be seen as those. So,
yeah, if I know a lot of people liked the Time Traveler's Ex-Wife as a sort of, because it focuses on Peaslee's wife, Alice, who is, the funny thing is that she, we think of her as a disposable character in the first book, but she's actually this huge foreshadowing for the novel in The Shadow Out of Time. Her last name is this huge hint about what's going on.
Yes.
So there's that story, but then there's a prequel to that story, and then there's a sequel called Hannah and Her Mother Take a Very Long Lunch. And I kind of, Hannah and Her Mother Take a Very Long Lunch is this sort of time traveling meets Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's not really about anything, but it is, but it's not. And
it definitely is.
Yeah, it is, but it's not. It's sort of like, so yeah, it's sort of like, it's the typical thing where you get together with your mother and you have lunch, and she wants you to have a salad, and you want to have a piece of cherry pie, and or vice versa, and she's giving you all this advice, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? And it all takes on greater, deeper meaning when your mother is this time traveling, essentially female Doctor Who, who is telling you how you have to live your life from now on, because things have changed. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But it's kind of one of my favorite stories because it's kind of simple and fun, but it has some deeper meaning too. So there. All right. Hannah and Her Mother Take a Very Long Lunch.
Yes, and it is loaded with meaning.
Yes.
And cherry pie. So, yes.
I like the cherry pie thing.
And salad.
Yes, and salad. And there's as if you know my work, I always drop hints to other stories and little connections. And there is a connection to Seinfeld, and there is a connection to the Nite Owl Murders from, oh God, what is his name? It just came right out of my head. Movie with Kim Basinger. It's anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a film noir and a really good book. It'll come to me in a second. It's not The Black Dahlia, but it's by the same author. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it's good stuff. So.
Okay. Yeah, you are one to tie in a lot of cinematic references into your work, be it 50s greats, the Man with the X-ray eyes, etc.
Yeah, that was just the Man with the X-ray eyes with what is it, Ray Milland was just on the other night, and even though I've seen it like probably 1,000 times, I had to put it back on because I think it's one of the best Lovecraftian movies ever made. Ray Milland is dosing his eyes with and trying to see further and further, and he's seeing something in space, and it's slowly driving him mad.
How much can you see?
Yeah, and to the point where finally he just pulls out his own eyes to stop seeing. Yeah, really great stuff.
Yes, and unfortunately, that also makes me think of one of my favorite sci-fi movies. Oh God, why am I drawing a blank right now? Event Horizon. But I'm going to interject for a brief moment because I also like to see late into the night, and I love my coffee. Do you like coffee as well, Pete?
I do, and I drink a lot of coffee. Mostly since my son now works at Starbucks. So, yes, I drink my fair share.
Okay. Well.
What do you got?
I have a Nite Owl blend from Birds of a Feather Coffee Company. They roast their unique craft coffees in small batches, so it is always fresh. Have you ever had a non-fresh cup of coffee?
I have, and it's just awful. Oh,
man. But yes, Birds of a Feather has showcase blends. It's their signature blends, and they do showcase the amazing breadth and depth of flavor that coffee has to offer. And if you get someone that really knows how to roast a good batch of coffee, you can't beat it. Birds of a Feather. Birdscoffeecompany.com. So yes, head on down to birdscoffeecompany.com, enter Legends 10, and you will get a 10% discount on your coffee. So.
You know, I didn't just start drinking coffee until I was 25.
You didn't?
Nope. And now, you know, I'm kind of addicted. Have to have my coffee every day.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a bad thing. It's a good thing, but it's a bad thing.
But it's a good thing, too.
Yeah.
Kind of like loaded and not loaded.
Yeah. So you had mentioned, you know, my love of movies. And one of the things I'll talk about is, you know, Reanimatrix, which is, you know, apparently I thought this went unnoticed, but Booklist Online just named this one of the top 10 horror novels of the year. So there's that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I'm kind of thrilled about it. But this is actually based on one of my favorite film noirs, a movie called Laura, which is about a cop who picks up a murder case of a woman who is shot in the face, and through investigating her murder and all the stuff moving up to her murder, he slowly falls in love with her memory. And to the point where he's almost living in her house. And, you know, he's read all her diaries and her letters and this and that. He's drinking her booze. He's staring at her picture all day. And, you know, he's fallen in love with her memory. And then she turns up alive. And, you know, to me, that just screams for a Reanimator storyline. You know, same kind of storyline, except it takes place in Arkham. And so when, you know, somebody dies, they're not quite that. Well, they're just a little dead-ish. So.
I am trying my best to refrain from saying anything that might be spoiler.
Yeah. So yes, Reanimatrix is. I think it's one of my better works, though I don't have that many. What is it? Reanimators, Weird Company, Reanimatrix. Now I have
Peaslee Papers and the Lurking Chronology.
Lurking Chronology, and the book I edited with Brian Sammons, Legacy of the Reanimator. So yes,
that's right. I do.
Yeah, and that sort of came about because it took a lot of effort for me to find all these diverse Herbert West stories, and I sort of like wanted to put them all together. And I was joking online that it was the 30th anniversary of the movie coming up, and that we should maybe it was 25, 30, I don't remember. I think it was 85, so it was probably 30. And that we should do a tribute anthology. And the next thing I know, there were people online screaming at me to do it, including a publisher. So yeah, that's how that came about. But it put together a whole bunch of stories that had not been made available relatively easily. And you could only find in small press magazines scattered here and there. So we put them all together, and it turned out pretty good. I like it. I'm going to sneeze in a minute.
Yeah. I'm probably going to cough in a little while, but that's okay. Oh gosh. So you have that, and then let's go back a little bit to the Weird Company.
Sure.
How did that one come about?
The Weird Company came about because I could not sell a damn thing I wrote. Back in the early 90s, I wrote a story called On the Far Side of the Apocalypse. And it got picked up by a magazine, and it was my first professional sale. And I was like, yes, I'm in. Here it goes. And, you know, then I could not sell another story to save my life.
Oh.
So I sort of gave up, and just, you know, I just dedicated myself to collecting books again, which I've been collecting Lovecraftian fiction since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And read a book, I it was a chapbook about the history of the Miskatonic University Library. It was pseudo history. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. I could do that. And I started writing a pseudo history of Miskatonic Valley. And so I'm reading my entire collection of Lovecraftiana, Cthulhu Mythos stuff, and I'm taking all these notes and I'm building timelines. And I write the first chapter, and it gets published in Crypt of Cthulhu, and that's great. And I'm working on the second chapter, which is later, the colonial period. But I'm, working through all the books and stories, and I come across this thing, and my timelines all sync up, and I realize that Asnith Waite, the unnamed narrator from Shadow over Innsmouth, who we all refer to now as Robert Olmsted, Randolph Carter as Zakuba, are all in Arkham at the same time. Just within, probably, if not within a week of each other, within days of each other. And you cannot, you can easily make them like on the same day, passing through town. And I had been a big fan of Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I was like, oh, well, this is easy. Let's do this. We'll do a League of Lovecraftian Gentlemen.
Yes.
And so I wanted Randolph Carter as the Swami, and then Asnith Waite and Robert Olmsted. And then I wanted to bring Herbert West in. But Herbert West, his timeline was not working. He's dead, or sort of dead, or let's just say deadish again. And I can't force him into the storyline. And then also wanted Frank Elwood from The Dreams in the Witch House. So I start writing this sort of immense crossover, and I've got like a dozen names for it, and I'm really leaning toward the League of Lovecraftian Gentlemen. And I even had this like sort of mock-up where it's like the League of Lovecraftian Gentlemen, and then in lipstick, gentleman is crossed out. Because we have Asnith Waite, but sort of. Yes. But then as I wrote this story, and I really wanted a Reanimator in there, or I needed a Reanimator, I realized I had to create my own. So I took the whole Weird Company, I set it aside, and started developing the character that would become Hartwell, Dr. Stuart Hartwell. And my intent was just to write a couple stories and figure out what his background was. But as the time kept going, I just kept writing more and more stories about him, and they were all like linear. So it was like all of a sudden I have this 25-year history of Dr. Hartwell, and I kind of wanted to do that. It's like, so what would it be like to live in Arkham for the 25 years between between 1900 and 1925? And that was my intent. And the title was going to be like The Shadows Over Arkham. And, we bounced it around a bunch, and finally Ross Lockhart came up with Reanimators, and that stuck. And now we're well into, so Reanimators got published, and now we have a background for Stuart Hartwell. And, that was made writing with the Weird Company a lot easier. So the Weird Company is like the first book I conceived of, but then had to go backwards and fill in the backstory for Hartwell before I could actually write about him in the Weird Company. And he appears briefly in Reanimatrix too. So
yeah, he does. But maybe see, and this just goes with I am refraining from speaking too much because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, somebody actually asked me, where do I start with your books? And I had to hand them the Legacy of the Reanimator in the collection.
That would probably be the best place.
Yeah, even though I don't have a story in there, it sort of lays the most of the groundwork for what's going to come later. You have to really understand Reanimator history before you move into my books. So, but yeah, Reanimators, my first novel. It's a fix-up. I had published a whole bunch of short stories about Herbert West and Hartwell that finally appeared in that book. Weird Company was a little like that as well, not so much. And then Reanimatrix, only a couple of stories appeared previously. And then in, what is it, Peaslee Papers, like half the stories have appeared. And the new book, the sequel to Reanimatrix, will be entirely new. Nothing will appear previously. So, yes.
Tell me more about this.
No.
No?
No.
No?
Well, so obviously if there's a sequel to Reanimatrix, the characters live, right? So basically at the end of Reanimatrix, Peaslee and Halsey and somebody else have set up a detective agency in Arkham, and they're working, basically the Arkham crime scene. And if you can imagine what goes on in Arkham, they have some interesting cases. They're also in charge of new security for the library at Miskatonic. Following the events of the Dunwich Horror, they need to institute better security at Miskatonic, and so they have the contract for that, which is a whole other subplot. But
I mean, anyone that has played Chaosium's, I think it's a Chaosium licensed product. What is it? The Custodians of Miskatonic.
Right.
So, I mean, there are storylines abound in that.
Yeah, and I'll give you one little thing. So Derelith has a story called, God, I can't even remember what it's called anymore. Yeah. Anyway, it's about a little boy at a schoolhouse whose mother is possessed by a Lovecraftian entity. And his name happens to be Potter. So there's a cute little joke about, how they've had to deal with that darn Potter boy at Miskatonic University. And it's a little joke, and it's probably not as funny as I think it is. But it works for the storyline.
Okay. As long as it works. Man, now I just have all kinds of questions for the Reanimatrix sequel. So yes, they have their detectives office, and so they have the contract to protect the MU library.
Yes.
Can you give us any more?
Can I give you any more on that? Well, okay, so that's actually not the huge part of the deal. So Frank Elwood from Dreams in the Witch House, who survives, and he will go on to be in the Weird Company, is still at Miskatonic University. He's wrapping up his degree. He comes to the detective agency and says, I have a problem. These 3 people from my class are all dead. And they do a little bit more investigating, and they find out that more than 3. Half the class has been killed.
Okay.
And being a mathematician, Elwood knows that this is not something that could just happen. And
statistically impossible accident.
So so this section, I was playing around with it. I don't know where we'll end up with yet. I know where we're going, but this section was called a probability of murder. And the basic idea is that somebody's killing off Frank Elwood's classmates, and he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to be killed. So they have to figure out who, what, where, and why.
Yes.
And
when should we expect this?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I am about 30 to 40,000 words in, and it might run to 100,000 to 150,000 words. Okay. So it is coming along, not at a snail's pace, but I am apparently easily distracted and see, I already know where the story goes. I already know what happens, and it's like I'm not in a rush to write it because I know how it ends. But yeah, so every time somebody comes along and says, "Hey, would you write a story for this anthology?" I have to say yes because I'm easily distracted, and it's like squirrel, and yeah, because I'm not in a rush because I know how it ends, and you guys are just gonna have to suffer. But
okay.
Then after that, people have absolutely demanded that the Weird Company return.
Yes.
So,
okay.
The book after this one, and it's not even a working title. The secret title, the code title for this is called Vargar, V-A-R-G-R.
Yes.
But only because I previously revealed my titles and people took them and used them.
I think I remember that.
So so I'm not revealing my titles anymore, just so that somebody doesn't beat me to it. Not that the storylines have any relationship to what I'm doing. I just work very hard on titles. I think I come up with some catchy titles, and I don't want to lose them again. So there. But yes, the Weird Company will return, and they will probably go up against the Peasleys and the Peaslee Halseys. And so, yes, people demanding essentially a crossover between my two lineups. So, yes, Megan Halsey versus Stuart Hartwell will actually be a thing.
Okay.
Someday. I don't know when.
Okay.
But soon.
As long as it's not Pandora. Because it was like, wait. Because right then, my mind was like, wait, Megan, Pandora. Wait, no, that's Pandora I'm thinking of. So.
Yep. Megan is Pandora's mother.
Yeah.
And actually, her name is not Pandora. Pandora is her nickname.
Yes.
Her name is actually Endora Peaslee, but everybody just calls her Pandora because she's a troublemaker. And I think I've written 3-4 stories about her, and they're all different timelines. She's unstuck in time, so she flits about into different realities, and there's a story about that.
And I can't talk about it.
Oh yeah, well it's what is it? It's Pandora Peaslee, the prognosis of Pandora Peaslee.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, when somebody actually tries to cure her of her issues.
Yes.
And
someone does
yes
a thing that I'm not going to say. But going back to what you were talking about earlier, how you had gotten stuck. Like you were able to sell one piece and then you're like, yay! And you wrote all this other stuff and nothing sold and nothing sold and nothing sold, and then you just kind of went on a break. I might say that as far as writing is concerned, that's about where I am. And I'm taking a breather and doing some other things for the moment.
Right. And sometimes if you're not happy and you're not producing what you want to produce, and people aren't liking what you're doing, maybe you need to look at, consider doing something else. On the other hand, I will say that everything that I wrote in that period where I could not sell it has now sold. It's
wow.
So I had people, if you look at my my resume, my bibliography, you'll see all these stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think one year I had 17 stories come out.
Wow.
But it's all trunk. It's all stuff that I had written over the course of 5 years and could not sell.
Mm-hmm.
And then quickly, once stories, I got some notice, it was relatively easy to mine those stories for whatever anthology or project that was coming up that I could slip them into. Yeah, they took a little bit of rewrite, and there's some things that I look at now and going, oh God, this is a good idea, but yeah, it didn't do it so well. On the other hand, I say that, and there's a story that came out in Autumn Cthulhu, which I like, but I wrote it for my son and his class when he was in middle school.
Yeah.
But then I rewrote it for Mike Davis's Autumn Cthulhu. Mm-hmm. So I don't think very highly of that story. I like it, but it's not a masterpiece. But on the other hand, I just got asked if they could use it to teach a college course. So I think maybe I'm my own worst critic sometimes. Mm-hmm. Particularly, and sometimes you look back and you look at something and say, I could have done a better job.
Yes.
But other times people will look at that and say, you did a fine job. You have more skills now. And this is what our friend Joe Pulver talks about, the toolbox. As you become as you grow as a writer, you gain more tools. I have more tools now, and I could have done things differently back then. But apparently I did things enough to make some people happy. So, yes.
Absolutely. Well, what I am going to do is do you have much to add on what you've got coming through the pipeline?
I can give you some hints.
Yay!
All right, so I was editing this. I got asked to edit an anthology called The Chromatic Court.
Yes.
Which plays off this idea that I had where you could expand the mythology of the King in Yellow to other Lovecraftian entities. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the reverse of what Joe Pulver does. Joe Pulver, when you write about the King in Yellow, he does not want to see anything else. No Hastur, no Cthulhu, nothing. Just strictly King in Yellow mythology. Mm-hmm. What I did in one of the stories starring Robert Peaslee, The Sepia Prince, is I expanded the mythology to include other members of Lovecraft's pantheon. I did it just to start my novel, but other people liked it, and they said, well, why don't you do a whole anthology based on this? So we put out a call, and we got a huge number of submissions. I was reading for like 4 or 5 days straight, gibbering like this, and we came up with like 20 to 30 stories that we just absolutely loved. And it's just, but it's too big for the anthology. Oh. So we're working with the publisher. We're going to see what we can do. We might do it in 2 volumes. We might do, another themed anthology, something like that. But yes, so there's that. And we got some really great stories. I can't tell you who's in it because I've submitted my variations on various table of contents. And I hope that they take the people I want, but we don't know. So there's one thing. About 2 weeks ago, I was asked if I wanted to write a Dorian Gray story.
Add to it?
Well, there's apparently an anthology of Dorian Gray stories in the works.
Oh.
And somebody just popped out of nowhere and said, do you want to write a Dorian Gray story? And I'm like, yes, I'll write you a Dorian Gray story.
All right.
Well, the funny thing is that once again, this is sort of this thing that happens. I just had watched The Picture of Dorian Gray on AMC or Turner Classic Movies, one of the two, probably Turner Classic Movies, like a week earlier. So the story was in my head, and then this request came in, and I'm like, well, let me go back and look at it. Let me think about it. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, you know how things work. You turn things over in your head, and finally something comes together.
Yes.
And yeah, and so yes, once I had the idea, I banged it out in like 4 or 5 days. But it's always getting that idea that's hardest, and finding the right voice for it. But then once you get that stuff, I find that once I get the voice down, it's sometimes you got to figure out who's actually doing the talking. It becomes a lot easier. So yes, so those are in the works. I don't know. I've got a whole bunch of other stories out sitting there in boxes, trying to figure out who wants what. But yeah, things are happy. Working on the new novel, working on the new anthology, a couple stories here and there.
So if you've already been asked these before, I will try to come up with some new ones.
Nope.
I just improvisationally. So of games, do you prefer video games or tabletop games, and why?
Yes. And I do believe that somebody from Tabletop asked me this before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll probably, if we go back in time and we look at that, we probably get another answer. But I like Mario Kart.
Okay.
I like Mario Kart.
The Super NES version or which version?
I got the Wii version. I think Mario Kart 8, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Or
any particular map that's your favorite?
I hate Rainbow Road.
Yes.
Yeah, but Bowser's Castle.
Okay.
Gotta love Bowser's Castle. But that is a thing that I do with myself and my kids. Because really, it's a great leveling field. There's nothing you can be really, really good, or you can be an adult or a kid. I watched my girls play. They're 7 and 8, and they were taking on 17 and 18-year-old kids and whipping their butts.
Yes.
These kids came into my house and thought that they were gonna. No. Yeah, my 7-year-old beat them. But then tabletop. I have a nice spot in my heart for Risk. I've been playing Risk with there's nothing in the world like beating your 7-year-old at Risk. No, the funny thing is that so I'm playing with my girls because it's a good game. It's not like Monopoly where it takes up you start Monopoly, you could be there for 3 days. So you start Risk, and it's only a couple hours long, but the girls have figured out that if they just team up against me, they can beat me. But that only lasts for about 2 rounds, and then they're like at each other's throats. And, I keep telling them not to let me get Australia, and they just don't get it.
Okay.
So there's that. But then we played Call of Cthulhu and whatnot, whole bunch of different games on with our friends, and those are really fun. But those are huge time commitments.
Yes, they are.
And Friday night for me is a huge writing night. And to kill a writing night with
hopefully, yeah.
So sort of like in the middle.
I can understand that.
I want to play. I want to relax. I want to have fun with friends. Everybody else wants me to write the novel. Yeah. Which what do you want to do? So there has to be a give and take there.
Yes.
And sometimes it's hard to not write. Sometimes you feel like, oh my God, I finally figured. I do this thing where it's like I'll be sitting at work or someplace, and all of a sudden the solution to something will come to me. I was like, got to get it down now, and I got to work on this tonight.
Yeah.
And if you've made a commitment to Call of Cthulhu on that night, it's hard to break either commitment.
Yes.
So, yes, I love Call of Cthulhu. I love playing role-playing games. They are a time suck. And
I agree. I since we have disbanded Fridays, I have gotten so much more done.
Right.
Oh my goodness. In regards to just even learning more about homebrewing. I went to a local event and talked with someone that worked at a local radio station, and they were walking around somebody else's store asking me about the equipment and the process, and I'm just able to rattle off all. I even impressed myself. It's like, wow, when did I learn all of this? So.
Yeah, I got a smoker for Father's Day.
Yeah.
And now I'm smoking a whole bunch of meat.
Mm-hmm.
And with the goal of doing a smoked turkey on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just don't, fire up the smoker on Thanksgiving and say, I'm going to do a turkey. You got to know what you're doing. And this is way off our topic. But, if you're going to learn a skill.
This is absolutely within the realm of possibilities.
Right.
It's like we're talking about skill development and devoting time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that sooner or later, everything I've learned about smoking will show up in a book.
Yeah.
Just like everything I've discovered about coffee will show up in a book. So yes, those things will happen.
Yeah. And also for me with the brewing thing, I expect to have a piece up within the next week or so regarding how to brew some simple, get started in this hobby if you so choose to do.
Right.
Let's see. And the next question that I have for you, Star Wars, Star Trek, or for those of you that like neither of the previous selections, Dune. Which one and why?
Dune. Oh no. DS9 over the rest of Star Trek and Star Wars. But I gotta go with Babylon 5 over DS9, simply because I think that the whole J. Michael Straczynski thing was obvious from the beginning, an overarching arc, a plot that was thought out before they started everything. And it took a while for DS9. I think the first couple seasons of DS9 are a little soft.
Yes.
Once they got to the Dominion War, then things picked up.
Yes.
But I think Babylon 5 got there first. Anyway.
It's okay.
And then Buffy on top of everything, but that's not in, yeah.
Hey, it was a good time for television back then.
Yes.
Yeah. If you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
I could have one superpower, what would it be and why? Maybe this time around I think I'm gonna go with invisibility. Just because there's so much things I could get done. Just, there's some neighbors I could take care of. There's a couple of bank vaults. Oh wait, no, you want me to be a superhero? No. If you have it, the first things I'm going to do are going to take care of my personal problems. and then maybe we'll start helping out the rest of the world. But
Marvel or DC?
Marvel or DC?
Mm-hmm.
Dark Horse.
Oh.
Or, if I were going to show my age, Comico. But so I grew up on Marvel. I was always a make mine Marvel kid. Didn't like the DC universe at all. Was a big X-Men fan growing up. And then when I got into college, I got to go to my first comic book store.
Ooh.
Yeah, big difference. This has been like 85, and went to a real comic book store and saw what was really available. And that really, then I picked up, the first comic books I ever bought that were from a comic book store as opposed to 7-Eleven or the flea market, were V for Vendetta, Watchmen, Grendel, and The Crow.
Oh man!
So there's some huge independent masterpieces there.
Yes.
And it was a good year for comic books.
Yeah.
And then I never really went back and read X-Men, and I never really got into Justice League. I kind of like some of the DC stuff. I pick up all the Alan Moore stuff I can find and all the Neil Gaiman stuff I can find. I was a big Neil Gaiman fan for a long time. But I sort of outgrew superheroes, and I don't know why. Maybe with the X-Men, it's just because the mid-'80s, they became very repetitive and they lost the thread. The Claremont Burney years were good. What came later was not so good.
Okay.
So.
Sci-fi or fantasy?
Oh, sci-fi. I'll do sci-fi, but cheesy sci-fi.
But why cheesy sci-fi?
I honestly, so I do what I a moviecation, a movie education. I know,
yes.
I'm stealing from Pitch Perfect, but you have to watch a lot of crap to recognize when a movie is good.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of bad movies, and then I watch some really good movies that people think are bad.
Dr. Phibes is a good movie.
Dr. Phibes is a fabulous movie.
Yes.
And it was a box office smash.
Really?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't apparently a very good movie. But I like to watch bad movies to see what were these people thinking. And I have seen some horrifically under-budgeted films that were still really, really good. And then I have seen some terrifically overly budgeted films that were really, really bad.
Oh, yes.
And it was like, where'd the money go?
It seems like the latter is that much more disappointing.
Yeah. Well, because you can look at a movie and say, you know what? For the budget they had, they did a pretty good job. And then you can look at a movie and say, my God, what did you waste all this money on? Couldn't you have gotten a different actor?
Yeah, I mean, like with Guardians of the Galaxy, with that series, I think they did a fantastic job getting the Trauma Kid. Because you know that he milked every single dollar for everything that it was worth.
Right.
Because of all of his experience working with what he had at the time, which was not much.
Right. I think there's a really good, if you have ever seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes, I finally did. Did.
So they hired a real prop guy. And the prop guy's like, okay, I need this much money to do this. And I need this much money to do that. And I need this much. And they were like, we can't afford that. And, I'm paraphrasing here, but they're like, the popcorn gun, they had some guy like, okay, you know what? I can build that. How long does it have to last?
Oh, God.
And they're like, literally, it's on screen for like 10 seconds. It's like, all right, it'll shoot once. You know? So yeah, so he built a popcorn gun for like, I forget, it's like some outrageous amount, like 50, $60. And it
God.
works. It works for 10 seconds and then it's over.
Hey, it works.
But that movie looks great.
Yes, it does. I will admit, yeah, that it does for the time that it was made.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Okay.
So yes.
What job, if you were offered it, would make you immediately drop everything you're doing to say yes to?
I've already submitted my resume. Protector of the Earth.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Yeah, I'm completely unqualified.
Sterilize everything.
But yes, why not? Protector of the Earth. But once again, I'm going to take care of some personal issues first, and we'll worry about everything else.
Yes. Music question.
Yes.
What album can you listen to all the way through without skipping a single track?
Ooh. That's a good question. It's probably going to be something from Concrete Blonde. No, I'm going to go with Laura Perry. I think it's Bowel Movement.
Okay.
I really like that album. I think that's what it's called. I could be wrong.
Okay.
She was the lead singer for Four Non Blondes.
Okay.
Yes. Depeche Mode, Violator.
True classic.
Yeah. Concrete Blondes. Group Therapy. Oh, I'm gonna. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. That's it.
And I'm gonna close this out with, what question do you wish I would have asked you today?
What question did you? Where do you get your ideas? Oh, is that your next question?
Yes, sure.
I wander down the back alleys of other writers' works and I steal from them.
Okay.
And, if somebody's not using a character or a plot point, if they put it in there and they just dropped it, I will steal it, massage it, repackage it, and sell it back to you.
Okay.
All right. So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Is there anything else that you would like to touch upon before I draw our evening to a close?
I'm Pete Rawlik, and you're not.
Okay.
All right. So, no, I have nothing.
Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in, guys, and you all have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.